Do I try and read 7 books in 7 days? It's one of the best audiobooks that I've listened to. Weird, and I can't explain it. Genuinely great twists. I have spontaneously decided to take part in Summerween this year, which is really exciting because I haven't taken part in a readathon in about a year, maybe longer, and I haven't taken part in Summerween specifically in about 2 or 3 years. So it's going to be a really good week. This, if you don't know, is a readathon that's hosted by Gabby from Gabby Reads, and the idea is that you bring Halloween into the summer by reading spooky, scary books like horrors and thrillers. I have put together kind of a TBR. I'm going to be trying to tick off as many of the prompts as I can. So I picked up 2 books initially, which I think are going to hit all of the prompts, and then everything else is going to be mood reading. I've cheated a little bit because I needed an audiobook to listen to on my way to work the other day, and I also went for a run last night and needed something to continue listening to. That's not important. The point is, I am a third of the way through the first book that I'm reading for this vlog and for this readathon, which is The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson. This has a pink cover, and one of the prompts is to read a book that has a pink cover. So this is the one that I went with. It's a very pink cover, so I think it really hits the prompt. This is, I think, the 5th book that I've read by this author. It's the 3rd of her books that I've read in the past year. It follows a teenage girl who is 18. Her name is Jordan, and she has just moved away for college. She is attending a university where for the first time she feels like she has friends. She previously attended a private school where she was, I think, the only black girl, whereas now she's attending a historically black university, and she's gone up against her parents' wishes in order to do this. They didn't want her to go to this college. There's 4 of them that live in this dorm, and within the first few weeks, one of her roommates, Vanessa, asks if her older brother can come and stay with them while he gets back on his feet because he's just been released from prison. And Jordan and the other girls, of course, say yes because they think that they're all friends, and they initially think it's only going to be for a few days, maybe a few weeks. However, very quickly, there's something up with this guy. I haven't looked into it too much, but I feel like this is a cult book. This guy is behaving and acting like you would expect a cult leader to act. He's become very controlling, he's gaslighting them. Jordan feels like she's in this really difficult situation because she doesn't want to upset this new friendship group that she's established. I feel like the main theme of this book is around how when you first move out of home, when you first leave your family and you're away from your parents, you do become vulnerable because you're making your own way in the world. You're going through these different experiences, and there's a possibility that people might prey on that lack of experience. Out of all of the books that I've read by Tiffany D. Jackson, this is the first one that has felt YA, and I'm a little disappointed because when I saw that this was set in a college, I thought, okay, this might actually feel a bit more mature than her other books. Not that her other books, like I said, have felt YA, they are marketed like that, probably because they follow younger protagonists and they're about issues that young people face. But I think it's really important for adults to understand what young people go through and to have empathy and compassion. So that's why I like reading her books. But yeah, I'm a little disappointed with this one so far. I feel like we're being spoon-fed a lot and the writing just feels a bit more simple. But the audiobook narration is great. I think it's narrated by January Lavoie, and I think she's doing a great job with the different voices for the different characters. I think that her voice is really expressive, so I am enjoying it, kind of. It's just not quite what I was hoping it would be, especially when I compare it to Monday's Not Coming and Allegedly, which I've read within the past year. Those came out, I think, in 2017 and 2018, so about 8 or 9 years ago, and it does feel like her writing has just taken a step back. I'm going up to Manchester tomorrow for the day, which is about a 6-hour round trip, so I'm going to be quite tired by the time I get home, but I am going to have lots of audiobook listening time, so I'm hoping that I might actually finish this before the end of tomorrow, which is good because I'm not going to have much time for physical reading over the weekend. I have also decided on my first physical read of the week, which is going to be Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This ticks off 2 of the other prompts. It's a book under 250 pages, and Delilah S. Dawson is a new to me author. So I think the only other prompt that I have is to read a book in the dark or at night, which I will be doing this evening. Goodreads describes this as a sweet sapphic romance that takes a deadly dark turn. It's about 2 women who meet at a farmer's market it, and I think the main theme is obsession. I've heard amazing things. I've not seen any negative reviews for this book at all, so I am expecting it's one that I'm going to love. So yeah, those are the two books that I'm going to be kicking off the readathon with. Let me know in the comments any books that you read for Summerween, because by the time this video goes live, Summerween will be over, but I feel like you can do Summerween at any time over the summer. I will check in with you once I've probably finished those two books, because Bloom is so short. I think it's less than 200 pages. And then we will decide on my next read, which I have an idea of what it's going to be, but I'm not sure because I have an arc of this book. It's coming out in August, and I don't know whether I want to read it now or whether I want to wait a few weeks. So we'll talk about that when I'm back from Manchester. It's day 3 of Summerween and I have finished 2 books, plus I've started another. So we're going to get into some reading updates. I feel like we're off to a great start with the readathon. I was actually thinking, do I try and read 7 books in 7 days? Or is that a little bit ambitious? I feel like that might be a bit much, but we're going to see how it goes today, because if I finish a book today, then that's 3 for 3, and it wouldn't be too difficult to to prioritise short books that are on my TBR. I don't want to feel like I'm reading 7 books for the sake of reading 7 books, so I'm not going to push myself. I'm just going to see where we go from here. But obviously the point of this reading update is to give you a reading update. So let's start with the first book that I finished on Friday night, which was Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. I think I'm going to give this 4 stars. The main reason it's not 5 stars is because I think I knew too much about this book before going into it. And I would say that if you're interested in a sapphic horror that's about a sapphic relationship that has some very dark and gory elements, and also it has a cottagecore vibe, it starts off feeling like a romance. And what I found really interesting is that the main character, Ro, has never been in a relationship with a woman before. She's only ever dated men, and you see how that influences the way that she acts in the relationship. And I thought how that was woven into the story, it was really, really clever, I thought. I liked the suspense, however, I think that feeling would have been heightened if I didn't already have an idea in the back of my mind as to the direction that it was going to go in. And like I said, it's not that I was spoiled by any one review. I think I've just heard so many reviews for this book that before I even picked it up, I thought, oh, I wonder if it goes in this direction. And I just couldn't get rid of that thought from the back of my mind, and it turned out that I had worked it out, even though it's not what I would call predictable at all. So I would strongly recommend this, and I would pick up other books by Delilah S. Dawson. If you have any recommendations, then please let me know. I then, on my way home from Manchester last night, finished The Scammer by Tiffany D. Jackson, and I have some really mixed feelings on this. I think this is my least favourite by this author because it did feel a bit surface level to me. I think it's really easy for me to sit here and say I found it frustrating. The characters seem to so easily fall under the influence of this guy. However, this is based on something that actually happened. I looked into it, I was doing some research on the train. Apparently, I think it was a college in New York where a guy moved into a dorm room and he established a cult, and it went on for about a decade. So it's not that I found this unrealistic. Because you're inside the main character's mind, I understood her perspective. I understood that she was isolated from her family. She didn't feel like she had the support of her family, and so that's why she was vulnerable. However, in terms of the other characters, I felt like I was just told that they had fallen under this guy's spell, and like I said, it all felt a bit surface level. There's other factors that were also coming into it, like for example, at this time there's a lot of protests that are happening against police brutality. This guy is very charismatic, he's older, and he mixes in these lies with truths that sound like they are unbelievable. And yeah, like I understood it. I wanted it to go further. I wanted it to have a little bit more depth. Maybe if the timeline had been stretched out a little bit and this had happened over a longer period of time, maybe that would have helped. My biggest issue though is that it mentions something in the synopsis that leads you to believe that this is going to have a mystery that needs to be solved. And that is not the case at all. I'm not going to say specifically what is said in the synopsis. You can read it if you want, because I don't feel like it's actually a spoiler. I think it's more misleading, and I don't understand why that particular element was even mentioned in the synopsis, because it doesn't happen until quite far into the book. This is not a mystery in my opinion. It's just a straightforward thriller, and yeah, it was okay. I didn't love the ending, and obviously I can't go into the details, but I think the ending was too heavily foreshadowed. There was one element that did take me by surprise actually, but the overall ending, I kind of guessed that something like that was going to be the case, and I rolled my eyes a little bit because I didn't feel like it made a whole lot of sense. But yeah, it was fine. It was probably a 3 to a 3.5 star read, and I would continue to read other books by this author, but I wouldn't recommend this over some of her other books, which I've given 5 stars. I actually came home from Manchester a lot earlier than I was planning to yesterday. I'm not going to go into it, but I wasn't feeling well, is the short end of it. And I was upset because I was in Manchester to catch up with some uni friends, and that didn't go to plan. I was really upset when I got home, so I decided to pick up The Unknown by Riley Sager, because this is one of my most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. I have an advanced copy through NetGalley. I think I read about 20% yesterday evening, like I said, after I got home, and I'm really enjoying it so far, but I'm nervous because this has happened. In fact, I think this has happened with most of Riley Sager's books, where I enjoy the beginning. My overall enjoyment is very much dependent on the direction that the story goes in. So this, if you don't know, is following a main character called Marin, and she is an unknown actress. Before the start of the book, she's auditioned for a movie. The previous actress had to drop out, and so they're trying to recast someone quickly, and she gets the part. This movie is based on something that really happened 100 years ago. There's an island in Vermont where 5 women went missing. They disappeared, and all that was found was 5 dresses hanging from a tree on this island. There was lots of speculation about what could have happened. The locals claimed that these women were witches. However, a diary was found that was written by one of these women, and in that diary she spoke about how they were all gifted in some way. You do get excerpts from this diary throughout the book, and what they found through this diary is that these women were conducting seances, and possibly they conjured something that destroyed them. That is obviously the legend, and Marin isn't sure whether she believes it or not, but she's told that her and the crew, before they even start filming, they are going to this island to live there, and I think it's called method acting. The director wants them to experience what life on this island would have looked like for these women, so that they can fully embody their characters. However, before she even gets on the island, she receives a text message from the actress who was previously going to do the part saying, "Don't go there, you're going to regret it." And it's a really chilling kind of creepy setup. I love an isolated setting, and yeah, the setup so far has been so good. I read that first 20% so easily. I'm really intrigued by the plot for this. It reminds me a little bit of Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard, which, unpopular opinion, but that's one of my favourite books by Catherine Ryan Howard. I assumed from the synopsis that this might have some paranormal or supernatural elements. I'm not going to confirm either way because I feel like that can be spoilery. For me, it's enough to know that it's a possibility. Personally, I don't like it when I'm reading what I think is a straightforward thriller that's grounded in reality. I don't like it when I'm reading what I think is a realistic thriller and then it takes a supernatural twist. I hate it. However, I'm open-minded if I know from the beginning that it's a possibility. So that's my mindset going into this, and yeah, I'm intrigued to find out more. I'm gonna read for most of this afternoon. I have also started a new audiobook, but it's quite short, so I'm probably just gonna tell you about that once I finished it. It's a few hours later and I am filming this in the living room because Sam is taking a nap in the other room. He's decided to stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the England match for the World Cup. I am not going to be doing that. I have no interest in losing sleep, but I wanted to film an update because I've made it to the 60% mark in The Unknown by Riley Sager and I'm really loving it. I wanted to record this now just in case it disappoints me in the end, but this is giving me that feeling, that sinking feeling of just feeling scared. Like when I was a kid or a teenager and I used to read Stephen King books and they would actually scare me. That's how I'm feeling reading this book. I don't want it to come across like really dramatic. It's not like the most horrifying thing that I've ever read, but there's something about reading about characters that are isolated and creepy stuff is happening. I put myself in that mindset of how I would feel and I would be petrified. I would not survive a horror movie at all. Me and Sam have actually said that we might watch a horror movie this week because when he got home last night, I made him watch, what's the name of the film? Voicemails for Isabel. Getting off topic, but yeah, just wanted to pop in and say that I am loving The Unknown and I really, really hope the ending doesn't disappoint me. I have high hopes because it's doing that thing where it's bringing attention to theories that I have, which makes me think that my theories are wrong. I like it when authors do that. I think it's really clever. I think out of all of Riley Sager's books, this one is reminding me a few of them, probably not House Across the Lake, Home Before Dark. There's so many Riley Sager books now. I'm thinking I need to do an updated ranking of his books because the last time I did one, I think he had 6 published novels and he now has 10. So I might work on that. I might do that as a short rather than a full-length video. But again, I'm waffling. It's really hot. Apparently it's going to be 30 degrees again the rest of this week and I'm not looking forward to that. Happy day 4 of Summerween. I finished another book last night and I don't think I'm going to be able to keep up this momentum throughout the week because I do have a full-time job, but we're going to see how it goes because I'm in such a good reading mood right now. I'm having such a good Summerween. It's great and I'm happy to say I did enjoy The Unknown by Riley Sager. Obviously this doesn't come out for another few weeks. So I still want to give you an idea of what to expect. I still think my top 2 Riley Sager books are Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark. Home Before Dark is my favourite. I would put this on a similar level to The Only One Left. I think if you liked The Only One Left, there's a good chance you're going to enjoy this one. Obviously they have a slightly different vibe. The Only One Left is about a gothic manor house, whereas this is an island that may or may not be haunted and it has kind of occult vibes, but I think this is his best book in a good few years. His last few releases I enjoyed in the moment and I gave them somewhere between a 3 and a 4 stars, but they weren't new favourites and they weren't super memorable. I did have mixed feelings on the ending. I think this had some genuinely great twists, some twists and turns that I didn't see come in, which is quite difficult considering how many thrillers I've read. It takes a lot to surprise me, so I really appreciated that. However, I do think it went a little bit too far with the twists, and similar to when I read The Only One Left, this gave me whiplash. It felt like I was falling and there was nothing to grab onto and all I wanted was a rope to make me feel anchored. It was a bit stressful at times because I like a couple of good strong twists in a thriller. I don't want an author to just cram in as many as possible. That's just not my preference. And I feel like Riley Sager does take it too far sometimes. Some of the theme work in this I also felt was a bit clunky. It does have some feminist themes, and I'm not saying that men can't write about feminist topics, but some of the conversations and the dialogue between the women, I thought, okay, that feels a little bit rushed and like this conversation is happening for the purpose of the reader rather than it being an organic conversation that they're having. It felt a little heavy-handed, but I could see that the intentions were good. or at least that was my interpretation. There were certain things towards the end that I didn't love, but I liked the general direction that it went in. As you can see, I'm still a little bit confused and I need to process my thoughts some more. So yeah, glad that I read it though, and I will continue to pick up Riley Sager's books because there's just something about them that I find really addictive. We are going to be moving on to another book tonight. I've decided on The Five, or I think it's just Five, by Iona Bannister. I actually have another book by this author on my own physical TBR. It's down here somewhere, which you can't see, so there's no point in me pointing at it. What is wrong with me today? I am going to be starting Five by Iona Bannister tonight. I've heard that this is a literary mystery. It's about 5 people at a train station, and you know that one of them is going to die in 5 minutes, but you're not sure which, and I think it's like a character study of these various people. It sounds like my kind of book, so I have some high hopes, but of course I will keep you updated once I've started this. It is so hot today and we have quite a bit to talk about because I didn't film a vlog update yesterday. I was working from the office, and then when I got home I went for a walk and it was really hot outside, so by the time I got home I thought, nope, don't want to be on camera, I can just update the vlog in the morning, which is obviously what I'm doing now. I did finish a book yesterday though. I think I mentioned I'd started listening to a new audiobook, but I don't think I said what the audiobook was. So I finished Walking Practice by Dolky Min. This was a very short audiobook. It was only around 4.5 hours long, but it's one of the best audiobooks that I've listened to in a really long time. Fair play to the narrator because they had me hooked. It's basically about an alien who has been living on Earth for, I think it said around 15 years, and they have learned that they enjoy having sex with humans, but that they also enjoy eating them. I don't want to say too much because I feel like that synopsis is enough to hook you if you're interested. It does have a lot of body horror, just bear that in mind, and it is quite gruesome and graphic. There's these descriptions of how they're having to shift their body and manipulate it to take on a human form, and how sometimes things pop out of place, and I think it was really effective. Like I said, the audiobook was fantastic. The narrator modulates their voice based on what I'm assuming is written in the text. For example, there was a part where they said, "I'm so sleepy," and just kind of drew out the vowels, which again, it's just very engaging. There was a part where they were talking about having to climb some stairs and they said, "Oh my god, more stairs." Not exactly, I'm doing a really terrible job of getting this across, but the narration was really good. It was really expressive and I felt like I was listening to a real character telling me this story. I don't even like this type of writing where it's told in first person POV, but the narrator is breaking the fourth wall. I don't like that in written format. It takes me out of the story and I find it quite jarring, but listening to it, I think because when I'm listening to an audiobook, I do want to feel like I'm listening to someone tell me the story, and I felt like this alien was a real person. Obviously, this has a lot of horror elements, and as a story, there are these funny moments and these moments that are just really shocking and make you think, what on earth am I reading? There's also a deeper meaning behind it. You can look at this book as being a metaphor for queerness or disability or being non-conforming in some way. This alien feels alienated from society, and they're talking about how they are having to kind of adapt and take on human forms, but also human behaviour or human gender roles. The energy that it takes for them to mould their body and maintain the human form, how it drains them. Really appreciated the translator's note at the end. This was translated by Victoria Caudle and the narrator was Nikki Andres. I don't know if I've said that right, but apparently they have narrated a bunch of other books, so we'll definitely be looking into those. It did remind me a little bit of Monstrillo by Gerardo Simona Cordova, not in terms of the tone, because Monstrillo is quite sad, it talks about grief, whereas Walking Practice is a little more upbeat, but I think they do talk about similar themes, so maybe if you liked one, you would like the other, but I'm not an expert on this type of horror. In fact, I don't read horror that much, at least not compared to mysteries and thrillers. Speaking of which, I've made it past the halfway point in 5 by Iona Bannister, and I think this is going to be 5 stars. I'm getting 5-star feelings. I don't want to, you know, get too excited just in case it lets me down, but this is, I would say, a literary mystery thriller. It has some mystery elements, some thriller elements, but it's a character study. It's about these 5 people, and the way that the book is structured, you have this present day timeline, these little snippets of these characters on this train platform, and you're counting down to one of them dying. But then you also get in these chapters that are diving into the backstory of each character. And I don't want to say too much until I've got to the end, but I feel like this is a book about the relationship between parents and their children. Every backstory so far has dealt with that in some way. I love books like this where the author convinces me that these characters, maybe they don't feel the most realistic because sometimes things are exaggerated for effect, but I am invested in each of these characters. It's not necessarily that I like the characters, I just find them fascinating because Iona Bannister has really delved into like the nuances. Do you want to give a trigger warning for animal harm? It was quite graphic, and I know that's one of the main kind of content warnings that people would want to know about. There's also some other content warnings which I would recommend looking up just if you are interested in this. But so far, like I said, 5-star feelings. It's the final day of Summerween and I finished another book last night, my 5th of the readathon, so it's getting close to the wire. I don't know if we're quite going to manage 7 books in 7 days, but I'm going to do my best, especially because I'm feeling really excited about reading right now. I loved 5 by Iona Bannister. I'm actually considering giving this 5 stars. The only reason that I'm hesitating is because there were parts where it broke the 4th wall again, and I don't know how this keeps happening to me. The number of books that I've picked up in the last year that have this, I hate it more when it's first person, so with this being third person, it was a little more manageable for me, but it still irritated me a little bit. And you know what keeps happening? This is the reason why I don't like it, is because there was a point in the book where it broke the 4th wall and it said something like, oh, you formed an attachment to these characters now and one of them is going to die. And I was thinking, no, attachment is not the right word for how I feel about these characters. I think they're well written. I like the way the layers to the characters have been developed and I'm invested, but I wouldn't say that I'm attached. That implies that I'm going to be super upset about who dies. And at that point I thought, I don't know whether this is the right word and that's why I don't like it when a book is trying to bring me into the story. It makes me feel weird and I can't explain it. I would rather be an outside observer. I don't want to be part of the story. Leave me out of it. I read this through the Kindle app on my tablet instead of my actual Kindle because I wanted to highlight, and I find it a lot easier to do that on my tablet. I highlighted loads, and I'm not usually someone who highlights a lot, but there were certain passages and phrases that I thought were just so poignantly written. This actually reminded me a little bit of Frederick Backman's writing, except I think Frederick Backman uses humour much more than Iona Bannister. There were parts. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is I think that if you like Frederick Backman, then maybe give this one a go. Just don't go into it expecting a thriller because those elements I felt were a little underwhelming. I'd say it is a suspense because you're counting down to this event, but it is much more about the commentary on the characters, how multiple things can be true at the same time, how you can love someone but also recognise that they have a darkness within them. It's more of a slow unveiling of the plot rather than you're piecing together a mystery and you're waiting for something shocking to happen. I can see some people finding this really boring, but I found it really interesting. As I've said multiple times, I am even more excited now to pick up the other book that I have from Iona Bannister, which is Little Prisons. I bought this because it has a cat on the cover. It's been on my TBR for years. I think technically I bought it with a gift card that my sister got me for Christmas one year, so even more reason why I should be prioritising this. I'm expecting this to be very similar, but maybe less of a thriller. I do feel like the marketing for 5 has been a little bit off. So that's my only critique, but yeah, it's definitely higher than a 4 stars, maybe a 5 stars. Definitely my favourite book that I've read so far for this vlog, and I think if you like books that explore familial still love and the different shapes that that can take, then this could really work for you. I'm filming this on my lunch break, so we still have quite a few hours left of the readathon. I am going to be reading after work, which is why I'm not going to be wrapping up the vlog here. I am going to be picking up another book. I put a poll on my community tab to get you to vote for a book for me to read. I did it a few days ago, so it would have time to build up, and the overwhelming majority voted for Murder on the Lamplight Express by Morgan Stang. This is the sequel to Murder at Spindle Manor, which I read a few months ago. This is a self-published series, and it's a series of murder mysteries but set within a steampunk fantasy world. And I really liked the first book. It follows a detective type character, and they are tracking down paranormal creatures, or at least that was the case in the first book. I'm assuming that the second book might be the same. I'll give you a proper synopsis once I've started it, but I think it's very clear from the title that this is inspired by Murder on the Orient Express, which is the only Agatha Christie book that I've read. I will be starting this tonight. It's about 270 pages. So it's not the longest book, but it's also not short. I don't know whether I can read 270 pages in one evening, considering I also have to go for a walk after work. I have to make dinner. I would like to do some yoga this evening, and Love Island starts at 9 o'clock. I am deep in the Love Island trenches. I'm only watching the UK version. I tried the US version, didn't get on with it. This season isn't my favourite, but I'm in it. And I was thinking, if I wasn't watching Love Island right now, I probably would have been able to read 7 books in 7 days easily. Obviously, I would have had to deprioritise other stuff in my life, so it's not sustainable long term. But if I do finish this book, I'm going to finish it no matter what. Like, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging. But if I do finish this book tonight, then it wouldn't have been too difficult for me to read another book with the hour that I would have saved by not watching Love Island. Anyway, I'm rambling. We'll check in with you tomorrow, and we will hopefully maybe wrap up this vlog. But if I do have to continue it an extra day, then I'm going to allow myself to do that. So the readathon is now over, and I have finished 7 books. I didn't finish them in time for the end of the readathon, but I have now finished 7 as of the time of filming. So it is a shame that I didn't quite get them in at the last moment. Technically, I read 6 1/4 books. I finished my 7th book last night. So yeah, I thought I would finish off this vlog by telling you about those final 2 books. The last time I spoke to you, I just finished my 5th book. What I didn't mention is that I also listened to a short story earlier this week. I listened to the audiobook for The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I didn't tell you about it at the time because I loved it so much that I wanted to reread it physically. It's a classic text. I think it was published in 1892. It was a 40-minute audiobook, and it took me about 20 minutes to read the physical version. I loved this. I've wanted to read it for a while because I've heard that it's a very feminist story. It's basically told from the perspective of this woman who is writing down her thoughts. It's a book about mental health, and at the time they would have called it hysteria. Her husband's a doctor, and he is very dismissive of her. He comes across as caring and like he wants what's best for her, but it's about her mental state as she's writing down her thoughts. This was something. She develops an obsession with the yellow wallpaper in the room where they're staying. I think something is going on, like there's repair work being done at their home, so they're staying in this country manor, and she develops this obsession with this yellow wallpaper, hence the title. It has a lot of commentary on attitudes towards women's mental health of that time, but also some of it, in fact a lot of it, is still relevant today, and I thought this got very interesting. I don't obviously want to say too much because it's such a short book, and I would encourage a lot of people to read this. As I said, I enjoyed it so much that I wanted to reread it. I went down a Reddit rabbit hole after finishing it because this is quite ambiguous. The main character is not a reliable narrator, and I got to the end and thought, wait, did I read that correctly? And obviously there's no right way to interpret it. From the research that I was doing, a lot of people had the same interpretation as me, but there were some details that I'd missed by listening to it. I'm really glad that I decided to reread it. It's available for free online through Project Gutenberg. I always assume that people know this, but there are a lot of classics that you can read for free online through this website. I really like books that spark a discussion, and I really liked how this was very ambiguous, and it was like this stream of consciousness. So yeah, would definitely recommend this. I'm so glad that I got around to it. Apparently it's a short story that some people do study in high school or in college if you're doing like a literature degree. I'm very glad that I finally got round to it. That brings us on to the final book that I finished for the readathon. Technically, I only read about 25% on that final day, but I finished it last night. It's currently Saturday, just to give you some context, but I finished this, and did I tell you the name of the book? Murder on the Lamplight Express. It's really hot today and I feel like I'm sweating, so please ignore that if you notice that. But I finished Murder on the Lamplight Express by Morgan Stang. This, like I think I mentioned, it is a sequel. I would recommend reading this series in order because there are quite a lot of side characters, or there's a few side characters from the first book that also appear in the second book, and I think you would miss out on some character stuff. It's not the most character-driven story or series anyway, it's very plot-driven, but I think it helps to have read the books in order. And also this second book spoils what happens in the first book. In this series, we are following Isabeau, who is a huntress. So she hunts monsters in this world. In this particular book, she is tasked with boarding this train that is travelling from one country to another, and her mission is kind of vague. She's not given much information, which forms part of the mystery. There's a lot of different mysteries that are kind of running through this story, but she is basically told that she has to make sure that this train gets to its destination and that no one is harmed. However, as you can possibly guess from the title, there's a murder that occurs that Isabeau has to solve. And I really liked this. I thought it was so well paced. I love mysteries where you get little twists and turns throughout the book and there's some surprises. I like how this has some supernatural or paranormal elements as well, but it's still, at least in this book, it all made sense. One of the issues that I had with the first book is that there were certain supernatural things that to me came out of nowhere and that weren't fully explained, but this one, it felt like it was much more smoothly plotted. It expands a little bit on the politics of the world, which I really appreciated, because that is one thing that I think is preventing this series from feeling like a 5-star series for me, is that I want just a bit more about the world. I also found it really fun that at one point it does reference Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. There's a character that says something and it is a very clear reference to the ending of Murder on the Orient Express. So yeah, that was really fun. But I would recommend this series if you like mysteries and you like fantasy and you want something that combines the two. This does to me feel like a classic murder mystery within a fantasy world. So yeah, did I say my rating for that? I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. I feel like this has been a really successful reading vlog. I would say that everything I enjoyed. There wasn't anything below a 3 stars, which I think is always a success. So thank you for watching this vlog. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments if you were taking part in Summerween and what you read. I think I would like to try this challenge again sometimes, maybe at a time when Love Island isn't taking over most of my evenings. But yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, but otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.